Hey everyone, Curse Deck Builder here, making our way to 10,000 decks assisted. And here we have a Gishath Sun's Avatar Dinosaur Tribal deck. This deck comes to us from Vividin, who says, what needs improvement? Maintaining gas in hand and recovering from wipes. Imagine they mean board wipes, and their deck building restrictions are $15 a month on upgrades. So let's see what we can do to help this deck be a little better, little forward on gas and a little better on board wipes. And I think there's already a solution for these, but I'm going to give a nice, amount of cards to kind of suggest where this deck can go. As always, this deck list will be in the video description below, and I highly recommend that you take a look and see what's in there while you listen to the video, before you listen to the video. If you're thinking about building Dinosaur Tribal, it's good to see what options there are. Dinosaur Tribal, it has a bit of a reputation of being an Ixalan only set, deck, but I think it's important to remember that we are going back to Ixalan soon. And in addition, there's been a lot of dinosaurs printed recently that I think are worth considering when we are building the deck. I'm going to recommend some, and if you think of any that I haven't, please comment below so we can help Vivid make the best Gishath deck possible. So who is Gishath, Sun's Avatar, and why are we using them as our dinosaur tribal commander? Well, pretty forwardly, excuse me, they are an 8 mana Naya 7/6. That's white, red, green, of course, with trample, vigilance, and haste. And the main reason we use it is that when Gishath's Sun's Avatar deals combat damage to a player, we reveal that many cards from top of your library, which usually is at least 7, our commander's power. And then you can put any number of dinosaur creature cards from among them onto the battlefield and the rest at the bottom of your library in a random order. So you hit once with Gishath and you get a slew of very strong dinosaurs into play. Now, let's take a look at the curve. When we go down to the curve, we can see the curve kind of goes quite a bit in a lot of directions. This is to be expected as we have a dinosaur deck, and dinosaur decks, much like, sorry, I'm struggling to close my window so we don't hear the lawnmowers outside. A dinosaur deck is like a dragon deck in the sense that a lot of its strongest cards are very high mana. So it makes sense for the curve to be kind of longer in this way as we are playing as many cards as many good dinosaurs as possible. We can also see that we have a bit of, I don't like when I put my mouse here, I can't see what I'm looking at. So we can see at around 5 mana, we have like 8 cards, which is kind of the average of the deck, which is a pretty high average, but, or middle of the mana. I guess it's a median of the deck, we should say. But we can see our average mana value is 4, which is rather high. So a big thing about the deck is mana ramping. And as we can see, our deck builder has put a lot of consideration into that. We have quite a bit of ramp here. We can see quite a bit of different options, including ways to make our creatures indestructible to already protect from board wipes. And then we have quite a large collection of dinosaurs. Very quickly, I'm going to say some general things. I'm going to look at our few of our dinosaurs that stick out, but I'm not going to cut too many cards because it's the kind of deck that cuts are really dependent on the order of the cards we put in. I'm going to be giving a kind of a large number of cards and ideas to work with. And with that in mind, I'm going to say, depending, because there is budgetary concern, depending on budget and acquisition, cards should be added and removed in that order, right? We should be, if you're taking out, a bunch of high mana, if you're putting in a bunch of high mana cards, you shouldn't be taking out a bunch of low mana cards, for example. All right, so a few general notes, and this one is very much a budget thing, and I understand that, is that our mana base needs improvement. Now, we can see right here we have the Pain Lands, which is very, very good start. Do we have all three? Brushland. The last one would be the red-green one. Yeah, there it is. So that's a good start. We are playing some of our check land, not the check lands actually. I forget what these are. I think they're called tangle lands, where you need two to tango, so you need two basics. I could be wrong. Regardless, having these are good. I believe they only come in allied colors, so we are limited in those. But it's important to note that these are only duels that are fetchable by cards like Three Visits, cards like Nature's Lore, and cards like Farseek. So I have to say that though it is a bit of a cost to do so, is it Jetmir? Uh, Cards like Jetmir's Garden and the Shocklands are gonna have to be a slow inclusion. Most of these cards are going to be close to $10 up to, and a bit higher, so it's going to take a little bit of time to get the money for them. If you can trade cards, that can always be good. But I would start with Jetmir's Garden because it is all three of your colors and it's fetchable by forests. Any card that is a forest, and I believe you are playing Farseek. I could be wrong. Yeah, Farseek will also grab this as it is not just a forest, it's a mountain or a plains. And this is ideally the best land you can grab every single time because it is all three of your colors. After which, getting cards like Sacred Foundry um, and the other Shocklands is going to take a little bit of time. Let's see what they're at right now. It's been, oh, Sacred Foundry. There we go. We can see it has gone up considerably in price, unfortunately, to $20. So these might be longer term cards to get, but they will be cards that you will inevitably need. So they are things to consider. In addition, I believe you're already playing one of them in Game Trail. There should be others, right? I don't know if this is on the enemy color too, but these cards that require for you to have. Oh no, this is the Game Trail ones. I am thinking of uh, tapped unless two or more. This is the correct one. Yes, I'm looking for this cycle where these lands come in tapped unless you control two or more other lands. So looking quickly, let's see. Overgrown farmland is about $6. Let's see. Rockfall Vale is about $1, so I think that would be ideal. And then the red white Sundown Pass is about $6 as well. So those are additional lands that you can be playing. You can't fetch them, but they are on the cheaper side. And then after which, I would even consider playing some tap lands that have the mana types. So let's say, I believe in Dominaria, we had them. So let's go to Dominaria. Where are we? Dominaria United. And we'll go down to the bottom looking for our lands. Maybe a bit too far. Maybe a bit too far. There we go. We have here a cycle of lands that has both land types but comes in tapped. Just your ability to fetch them into play with some of your ramp can help fix your colors. Once again, you'd probably want the Wooded Ridgeline, the Sacred Peaks, and Radiant Grove. All right, so that's the main thing I can say. It's going to be a long time to build a mana base that works with a deck like this, but it is something that you should be working towards. Then, very briefly, I'm going to look at a few of our dinosaurs, the ones that kind of stick out. Silver-clad Ferocidons sticks out as being a lot of mana for a card that you might have difficulty triggering. And this is a kind of card that you want to be able to deal 4 damage, like 1 damage 4 times to it, almost the second it comes out. This is a combo piece and less so a generic dinosaur because this is very vulnerable to board. The deck itself is already vulnerable to board wipes, but a card like this is even more so vulnerable to board wipes because it just doesn't do anything once it is in play if damage hasn't been done. If damage has been done, it has a really, really good ability, but you have to remember that. Verdant Sun's Avatar is fine. Polyraptor's great. Awakening Sun's Avatar is fine. Zatalpa is good here. Um, Apex Altasaur is great. Let me see. Tyrannix Rex is a little strange. I think it's good, but its toxicity doesn't really matter. I think just treating it as a haste 8/8 is fine. Um, Gisela is really strong, but also kind of stands out. If you want more cards of these abilities, I think you could just use generic enchantments that do the same thing of doubling. But I mean, you're ramping, so why not play Gisela? I'm not going to be too mad about it. Regal Behemoth is great. Godzilla uh, is very strong as well. I think the rest are generally fine. I'm going to suggest a few more. Um, Thrashing Brontodon doesn't feel very strong. I know it can be really strong, but um, I think you would probably just prefer a disenchant effect, maybe even naturalize. Let's do uh, Nature's Claim is the one I'm thinking of. Nature's Claim is just 1 mana, destroy artifact or enchantment. I know it's not a dinosaur, but it's probably just cleaner than having to have this dinosaur out and then sacrifice it. Is probably just a good call. In terms of mana here, Warstorm Surge feels like a lot of mana for this deck. It can be really, really good, but it could also just be the only spell you cast in a turn before you have your dinosaurs out, and I don't particularly like that. Um, Asceticism, I can never pronounce that, is good, but once again feels like a really, really like it's an investment card. And with that in mind, it can be okay. I would probably play one of these, not both. Greater Good, likewise, I would only play one. I would play either Asceticism or Greater Good because they do fundamentally the same thing where you're able to get value off of your opponents trying to remove your creatures. Like on a board wipe, you can try to regenerate a lot of creatures and get value from it. But I think Greater Good is just going to be better because you will be card positive at the end of it. Um, and remember that asceticism requires you to regenerate through a board clear, and damnation is still black's one of black's go-to board wipes, and that Wrath of God is still considered a playable board wipe in white. So there are going to be situations, especially against black decks, that asceticism cannot save your creatures and therefore has a bit of a cost to it. The rest of these I particularly like. Boon of Beseju, I've scrolled over it a few times. I don't really think you want this here. This is a card that just grows. Like it could be really good with Gestalt, and I think that's it. Um, I think you'll just be happier. Like your dinosaurs are big enough. You'll be happier using a few other dinosaurs that either give double strike or things like that, as opposed to casting a spell out of your hand that requires you to have the dinosaurs to begin with. All right, so let's go to your question, where the main thing you need to be able to do is you need gas, which I'm inferring as the ability to, build quickly, and then rebuilding off a board wipe, which once again is the same thing. Now, I am going to suggest something that feels a bit controversial. It isn't, but it's something I've noticed when people build these decks, and it is do not cast your commander until you have been board wiped. Gishath, your commander, is the mechanism for you to build a board incredibly quickly, right? It is Gishath is not only the thing that lets you get all your dinosaurs in play, it is also the thing that you play after a board wipe to get a bunch of dinosaurs in play. Especially when you use cards like Congregated Dawn to set up a very, very powerful, attack the next turn or a powerful board for the next turn. So with that in mind, I think your main game plan should be to develop your board, get your mana out, get a few dinosaurs out, and then try to overwhelm your opponents with those first, and only leaning on Gishath when you are too far behind or the board has been wiped. The thing also is that you your commander is a lot of mana, but you are a ramp deck. So objectively, the difference between 8 mana and 10 mana for you is not that much. If you take your time to get to like 10 or 12 mana while you are just playing out your dinosaurs regularly, by the time it's time to start playing Gestalt, it won't really feel like you're that far behind. Even after the board wipe, even after targeted removal a few times, you should still be able to cast once, he becomes 14, 16 mana. That's going to be a bit tougher, but if you're spending your extra mana when you're not casting him into ramping or other dinosaurs to be back on the board, I don't think you're going to be in a bad position. So, my first note is I think the solution to your problem somewhat already exists within the deck. But with that being said, I am going to propose some solutions in both defense against board clears and in order to draw some more cards in this deck. So let's start with the defense against board clears. Selfless Spirit, not a dinosaur, but is a creature that you can sacrifice to give all your creatures indestructible until end of turn. This is a great card because it's a threat that just stays out there. And by a threat, I should say it is a defensive utility card that just stays out there. And it demands your opponent either invest in the board clear, and that's going to destroy it for sure, or use the removal on Selfless Spirit. And I think that's particularly good because it wastes that removal, which could have gone on a much better creature, and you still get to use the Selfless Spirit in that moment, which, depending on turn order, it can protect you from an attack because you have indestructible creatures, so no one attacks you that turn. Or if it's your turn, it lets you still attack with those indestructible creatures. I think that's rather good. On the other hand, this is also, I would say, a relatively cheap card. Another cheaper card is Unbreakable Formation. Unbreakable Formation is really interesting. At one additional mana cost at instant speed, you can protect yourself from any board wipe. But as a bonus, if it is during your turn, you get your creatures with Vigilance. They also get a +1/+1 counter. That's not as important, but we're mainly playing this for the Vigilance, which allows you to attack out without fear of reprisal because, well, who's attacking into your dinosaurs anyways? I think this is good. I think almost universally you're going to be using it for the indestructibility on your creatures and not so much for the addendum effect. But it's cheap, it's fine, it'll solve problems. I think you'll be happy. And I think even with these two, that's already a lot of protection. I don't think you should invest too much on protecting your board because there's going to be a point where you're going to be drawing into protection from board clears instead of the creatures to, you know, defeat your opponents that they need to board clear in the first place. So the next few cards are going to be card draw, especially in green, that can help you out. Some of these will be rather expensive, so I will let you decide which ones to play. Guardian Project is okay here. I'm putting it out here because it's just kind of a staple in green, but I actually recommend it the least out of the other cards because it's the fairest one, where you're just straight up saying every time you get a non-token creature, you draw a card. Here's the thing though, you're not playing a lot of creatures. This is really like a turn. This is really good with Gestalt out because if you can put like three you know, dinosaurs out on that attack, you will draw three additional cards, including the one additional card you probably got off of Gestalt. So that's four cards. That's really cool. But at the same point, like if you're already doing that, you are kind of ahead. So this is a really good card, but this is a long-term card. It is like $10, which is almost your full month's budget. So I would keep this on the back of your mind as a card you could eventually go into. Return of the Wild Speaker is a really good card here. It's considerably cheaper. It is 5 mana, it is instant speed, and it just says you draw cards equal to the highest power dinosaur you have. That could be upwards of 10 cards in certain examples. Now, there's another mode of it which gives +3/+3 to all your dinosaurs and your non-humans, but that's not as important. Your dinosaurs are pretty big, and I would much rather use this as straight up drawing like upwards of 5, 6. Like with your commander, it's 7 cards. I think that's fantastic. It's cheap. It's worth playing. Another card that is card draw that is not dependent on anything else is Harmonize. Harmonize is very, very fun. Just draw 3 cards for 4. Can't really go wrong. I recommend playing just this in general because you always want in these decks just the ability to, without worrying, be able to draw cards, and Harmonize provides that. It doesn't care what board you have, it doesn't care what you know, how much extra mana you have. It's just draw 3. All right, the next one I'm going to suggest is Lifecrafter's Beastry. I think this is fine. I'm kind of hesitating on recommending this. The whole idea is that for each card, you get an upkeep scry every time, but then if you add a green mana to every creature spell you cast, you can draw an extra card. With your ramping, I think this is pretty good. With the soft power of the passive of scrying once each turn, I think you're eventually going to be happy with the result, but it's not the most powerful card, and I wouldn't pay more than like $1 for it if you do get it. Something on the other end in mana cost is Zendikar Resurgent, which I think could be really, really strong in the deck. I want to double check that you aren't playing it. You are not. Zenegar's Resurgent is like Mirari's Wake, where it will double the mana you produce, and then say, hey, if you have, every time you cast a card, creature spell, you will draw a card. This is just a really, really strong card. I think generally you'll be really, really happy casting it. You'll be happy to ramp into it. It's very close to your commander's mana cost, but I don't see a problem here. Definitely something worth getting, and if you could get it on the lower scale, that's just a few bucks, which I think is good. Then one last card draw card is Runic Armosaur. It is a dinosaur, so I do want to recommend it. This one's a trickier one. It says whenever your opponent activates an ability of a creature or a land that isn't mana ability, you draw a card. This can be really, really good, or this can be useless. On the lowest end, it is a dinosaur, and a 2/5 is actually not the worst body for a creature like this, so it's worth considering. But overall, I think it is beneficial for you to think of your play group and think how good this card is. This card can be ridiculous. If you are playing against an aristocrats deck or another creature ability deck, you could be drawing 4 or 5 cards, without paying any additional mana. And I think that's really, really good. But I will leave that to you to decide. Once again, a lot of these suggestions are going to be based on your budget, how you want to cut it up, and what order you want to get cards. With that in mind, I would like to suggest just a few extra dinosaur-based cards that I think are fun, and I believe most of them are rather cheap that you could benefit from in a deck like this, that I think you could just have on your mind. Kinjali's Collar Kinjali's Collar is an interesting card that I didn't notice wasn't in there. You're playing the Emerald Amulet, which reduces the cost of all your green cards. This is similar. So if you're in the neighborhood for this kind of effect and you want another one of these kind of effects, this card does exist to reduce the cast of all your dinosaurs. But I'm going to leave that to you to decide to what degree you actually want the ability. I just wanted to add it in there. I don't think I'm not going to say it's the strongest card, but I think it is an interesting card for sure. All right, let's get to some other ones. Marauding Raptor. Once again, this reduces the cost of your dinosaurs. This is kind of a key card in enraged dinosaur decks, but I would also say just in dinosaur decks in general. And so with that in mind, I would absolutely suggest that you pick this up. Marauding Raptor, like I said, your creatures cost 1 less to cast, and then every time a creature enters the battlefield under your control, this raptor will deal 2 damage to it. And so that will trigger your enrage on a lot of your stronger enraged creatures, and you'll immediately get the effect. Marauding Raptor will also grow every time this happens for the turn by 2 extra power, and that's fine. You might have attacks, you might not. I don't think that's too much of a problem, but I think the fact that it reduces the mana cost of your cards and gives a pretty good effect. I think this is a very quick inclusion and one of the cards I would grab early on. Another Raptor is a rampaging Ferocidon. Maybe it's not maybe it's a Ferocidon. I don't know if that's something else. It looks like a raptor to me. I don't know dinosaurs. Uh, I haven't been a 10-year-old boy in a very long time, and so I've forgotten most of my dinosaur knowledge. So menace players can't gain life, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield, this this dinosaur deals. See, it says raptors, Ferocidons. I'm gonna call it a raptor. So it says whenever your opponent's any player has a creature enter the battlefield, Ferocidon will do 1 damage to its controller. Now, this is really good for you because you have very few creatures coming in a turn. So the idea of it, you know, doing a lot of damage to you is negligible. This really, really hurts token decks. They will take a tremendous amount of damage if they're not careful, which is really good for you. And finally, the ability just to stop players from gaining life. This includes you, but I think it's worth it. You are a very aggressive deck that uses damage to win. So life gain opponents can be rather troublesome. So having this package of abilities on a card is just really, really good. And yeah, at a certain point, you might be sad because you're not gaining tons of life off some of your cards, but I'm going to bet on the fact that more often than not, you will be taking the least amount of damage and you will be getting the biggest benefit from this card. Just three more. Another Raptor is Rampaging Raptor. This is a new card that came out recently. It's not even 50 cents according to this. Trample Haste 4/4 for 4. You can buff its power, and then when it deals damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to target planeswalker that player controls or battle that player protects. You have two battles in your deck, and your opponents do sometimes play planeswalkers. I know Rampaging Raptor seems a bit boring, but honestly, just being able to immediately do 4 damage on a hasty trample creature is really relevant. I think I think this damage adds up a lot more than people give it credit for. If the play group is slow, if one of your opponents is taking time off to play enchantments, Rampaging Raptor can take quite a few bites out of them really, really quickly, and I think that's very much worth it. And its ability to dump all of the mana that you've invested, you've been just ramping into the Raptor and just dealing so much more damage, I think is definitely worth it. At 4 mana, we have Shifting Ceratops. I just think this is a cool card. I think it has a lot of abilities, but the fact that you can give both Trample and Haste uh, for 1 green each, I think it's really, really good. The protection from blue and the uncounterability is neat. I think the protection from blue is the main part that you're going to notice, but its ability for like 5 mana to be a 5/4 haste, and then from that point on being trample when you need it to be, I think is really, really good. Definitely just a strong generic dinosaur that your opponents are going to have a hard time dealing with. I particularly like it. And finally, one more dinosaur that I think you could really improve on, you could have, which is really cheap, is Charging Tuscadon, a 5 mana dinosaur that says whenever it would deal damage to a player, it deals double that damage to a player again. Instead, saying this out loud makes me feel like, hmm, maybe that's a mistake. Maybe I don't like this as much. I thought it was all dinosaurs. Well, let's come back to that, I think. I thought I had one more. I'm a little surprised where it disappeared to. Maybe I brought it here and I forgot to show it. Dinosaur, I believe it was 3 mana. Oops, yeah, 3 mana in red from Brothers War. Players trample, players can't gain life. Okay, I guess I just replaced this with the Rampaging Ferocidon. If you want a second version of this card, you can do that. It's a little sad that this card does not give all of your dinosaurs double strike. So with that in mind, I am just instead going to say, let's say equipment, lizard, then not a dinosaur, but maybe play lizard blades. Lizard blade just you can equip it to a creature to give that creature double strike really, really cheaply in red. Um, and I would say a lot of your dinosaurs would really benefit from double strike. Gishath themselves, obviously a lot, but other ones, just any trample dinosaur becomes so much more of a threat by playing this, and I think it's a fine creature. The fact that it's a creature and you have to, equip it for it to stop being a creature can be a little lame, but it also means that on a board wipe, it does enter back in as a creature, which can be helpful to get a little extra damage in. I guess it's just two, but still worth considering. Okay, I hope these suggestions have been helpful. Um, I think there's a lot of different avenues of attack to improve this deck over a long time. I think you just have to be a little stringent with your budget and try to improve here and there. But if you take nothing else from the deck assist video, I think really a kind of mindset you should have in this deck is that you are dropping really good, really big creatures that are incredibly dangerous. And if you're doing that and then casting Gestalt onto that board, I think you are opening yourself up for disappointment as someone wraths the board right after. Now, I think that's safe when you have things like Guardian of Faith or you're using Selfless Spirit. But if you're not in that position, I think it's fine to just be a little defensive, hold back Gestalt, and wait for the right time. If you're able to cast Regisaur Alpha and then one other dinosaur after the fact, you're already going to be very far ahead and very, very aggressive to the point that your opponents are going to have to start wanting to deal with you. If you let them burn out their removal, you know, uh, spend their mana and creatures trying to stop you and each other, and wait until the game is a little further along where people are low on cards, and then play Gestalt, I think you're going to be in a really good position. And that would be my suggestion on how to improve the deck without even changing a single card. After that, fixing up the mana a little with the really cheap, dual lands with the same card types, maybe investing in the Triome, Jetmir's Garden, or what have you, and then slowly improving with card draw and different dinosaurs. I think the deck will be on its way to being a rather strong deck. And when it's further along the way, I would love to see the next draft of this deck. I'm interested to see the direction you go. And when you're ready to send me that draft, there is a link to the form, the decklist assist form, in the video description below. So you could add another draft of this deck or any deck you'd like for me to take a look at. And if you'd like to skip the lineup and make sure your deck is the next one that I assist, there is a link in the video description for that as well. Thank you for watching, and as always, if you could do the whole YouTube thing, like, comment, subscribe, bell, what have you, I would be very grateful. And I love Gestalt and the dinosaurs. I'm really excited that we're going back to Ixalan, so we're probably going to get a bunch of new cards. And honestly, these days, with how much Magic product comes out and how many, set boosters and other stuff and collector's boosters that people are opening, a lot of the cards should come out relatively cheap. Nowadays, we only pay attention to those big, big cards that really impact formats, but we miss a lot of the really stronger middle cards that are still very valuable to a deck like this. Things like Rampaging Raptor, which I think are very strong cards at this power level that you can consider. And, it's not even $1, right? All right. Good luck.